All right, everyone, buckle up. We're about to embark on a deep dive today.
Yeah.
A deep dive into the world of the Griffon Vulture.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah. Those are pretty fascinating.
they are. I was going through all the stuff you guys sent in, and honestly, I had no idea. I mean, vultures.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think of them as like super exciting, but
Right.
but they are. And I learned so much just getting ready for this deep dive.
I bet.
So let's jump right in. First of all, I had no idea how big they were. I mean, we're talking like a wingspan wider than most cars.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Like up to 2.8 meters,
That's huge.
and they can weigh up to 12 kilos.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big birds.
big birds. And they're beautiful too, which I didn't really expect. Like they've got this pale, tawny brown plumage and those dark flight feathers.
Oh, yeah. Really well adapted for soaring. I mean, they can glide for hours without hardly flapping their wings.
It's amazing. Now let's talk about what they eat because, well, it's not exactly the most glamorous diet.
No, not really. I mean, we're talking carrion, dead stuff.
Dead stuff. Primarily the carcasses of large mammals.
Right, like roadkill.
Exactly. Roadkill, animals that have died from natural causes, that kind of thing.
And you'd think eating all that decaying flesh, they'd be like riddled with disease.
You would, but they've got this amazing adaptation. Their bald head and neck.
Yeah. That's always kind of creeped me out, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not the prettiest sight, but it's actually super functional. Prevents bacteria from building up while they're feeding.
So it's like nature's built-in sanitation system.
Exactly. Keeps them clean and healthy even when they're up to their necks in, well,
Dead stuff.
that stuff.
But it's not like they're just stuffing their faces solo, right? They're pretty social birds.
Oh, yeah, super social. They form these big colonies for nesting and roosting. You'll often find them on cliffs, rocky outcrops.
I read they're found all over, too. Europe, Asia, North Africa.
That's right. They're pretty widespread.
And they all work together to find food.
They do. It's pretty incredible. Think about it. They need to spot a carcass from miles away.
Yeah. No easy feat.
Not at all. Their eyesight is remarkable. They can spot even a small carcass against a cluttered landscape.
Wow. Talk about a keen eye. And then they all swoop down together.
You got it. It's like a coordinated effort. They use those strong, hooked beaks of theirs to tear through hide, muscle, get to the good stuff.
Wow. Nature's cleanup crew in action.
For sure.
But here's the thing that worries me. I was doing some reading, and it seems like they've been having a pretty tough time.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. They face a lot of threats.
Like what?
Well, for one, habitat loss. As humans encroach on their territory, they're losing the places they need to nest, to roost, to find food.
And what about poisoning? I know that's a big issue for a lot of birds of prey.
Yeah, it's a huge problem for vultures, too. Things like poisoned baits, meant for predators like wolves or coyotes, can end up killing vultures who scavenge on the carcasses.
That's awful.
It is. And then there are things like power lines. Collisions can be deadly.
And what about that drug I read about? Diclofenac.
Ah, yes, diclofenac. That's been absolutely devastating to vulture populations, especially in South Asia. It's a veterinary drug used to treat livestock.
But it's harmful to vultures.
It is. If a vulture feeds on a carcass of an animal that's been treated with diclofenac, it can cause kidney failure.
It's tragic. These magnificent creatures struggling to survive because of us. But there is some good news, right? I mean, there are people working to help them.
Absolutely. There are some amazing conservation efforts going on around the world.
Like what? Give me some hope here.
Okay, well, for starters,
Yeah.
reintroduction programs. They're breeding vultures in captivity and then releasing them into areas where their populations have declined. It's been really successful in some places.
That's awesome.
It is. And then there are things like feeding stations. They're sometimes called vulture restaurants.
Vulture restaurants. Okay, I got to hear more about that.
Basically, they're places where people put out safe, clean carrion for vultures to feed on. It's especially helpful in areas where food is scarce.
That's a brilliant idea. It's like giving them a reliable food source.
Exactly. And it helps to keep them away from carcasses that might be contaminated with things like diclofenac.
Smart. What about protecting their habitat?
That's crucial too. Creating protected areas where they can nest and roost undisturbed is a big part of conservation efforts. And of course, there are regulations against harmful substances, like the ban on diclofenac in several countries.
That's good to hear. And I know you mentioned Spain earlier. They've had a lot of success with conservation, right?
They have. It's a real conservation success story.
Hmm.
Their efforts have led to a remarkable recovery of the Griffon vulture population there. Their numbers have increased dramatically, and they've even expanded their range into neighboring countries.
That's fantastic. It gives me hope that we can turn things around for these birds.
Me too. It shows what's possible when people are dedicated to conservation.
It's not just about saving one species, though, is it? It's about the health of the whole ecosystem.
You're absolutely right. Griffon vultures play a critical role in maintaining a healthy ecosystem. They're like the unsung heroes of the natural world.
How so?
Well, their scavenging activities are super important for preventing the spread of disease.
So by getting rid of those carcasses, they're stopping diseases from spreading to other animals and even to humans.
Exactly. They're also vital for nutrient recycling. By breaking down those carcasses, they're returning nutrients back to the soil.
It's amazing how something that seems, well, kind of gross, can be so essential for the balance of nature.
It really is. And it's not just their ecological importance. They also have a lot of cultural significance in many
Oh,
societies.
that's interesting. Tell me more.
Well, in many cultures, they're seen as symbols of purification, renewal. They connect the physical and spiritual worlds.
I never thought about it that way. It's fascinating how our perceptions of these creatures can be so different.
Definitely. It just goes to show that there's always more to learn.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. You know, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the importance of the Griffon vulture. They're so much more than just scavengers. They're essential members of the ecosystem, and they're fascinating creatures in their own right. And it makes you wonder what other seemingly unpleasant creatures might be playing vital roles that we don't fully appreciate. I'm looking at you, dung beetles. Maybe that's our next deep dive. Anyway, a huge thanks to all of you who sent in your stuff about Griffon vultures. Keep those questions and suggestions coming, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the natural world.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Awesome.